So, welcome back to your Daily Dose of Dom. I'm your host, Dom. Today we are talking about Kirk Franklin and Kirk Franklin's son, their dynamic, and how we can be honest to both parties, honest to ourselves and our trauma. This episode is called Meet the Franklins, right? Because they're still family at the end of the day, and we have to be honest and respect that. Trauma and trauma responses is a heavy theme with this conversation. I'm sure everybody can see in the video that Kirk Franklin's 33-year-old son posted on social media where he was sharing how him and his father have a turbulent relationship, to say the least.
Okay, if you think I'm ready for this paper, let me say it like this. When your bitch ass starts getting disrespected, really that gets your skinny motherfucking ass.
So, I will be honest, to me, it's very important to be fair to both parties involved. And I've noticed that this has left the internet very divided, okay? And in this division, I've noticed that people have projected their own insecurities, their own trauma or trauma responses onto this video and ultimately this dynamic between Kirk and his son, Kieran, hopefully I'm not saying your name wrong, sir. But we're gonna talk facts here, right? And this is what we know. The son and the father have a strained relationship. That's one. The son is 33 years old. That's two. When he was born, his father was 18. Kirk Franklin was 18 when he had his son. Kirk Franklin was also 19 when he had his daughter with another woman. Not to say that she was the other woman, but she was the next woman behind Kieran's mom. And he went on to marry her, and they remain married to this day. There is a trauma response in abandonment that comes up for kids when their parents move on too quickly. That is first and foremost. No shade to the marriage and the union, because obviously it was God ordained, because they're still remaining very happy to this day. She hasn't said a peep, okay? But I think we have to be honest to shed light on why the son may have started his life feeling a bit neglected. Now, what I will say is, we don't know these people, right? We just know that there's a poor rapport between a father and a son. Now, this is peculiar, because even amidst the disrespect from both ends, there was still a very distinct clarity in what they were saying. They wanted you to hear every word. Typically, when I get upset, I start stuttering, okay? The girl's usually a decent talker. At least I like to think I'm a decent talker, but when I get upset, that word shit is done. When I get upset, you know what I tend to do? I tend to flip the first letters in like one word. So instead of saying something like Beyonce knows, I'll say something like Keonce bowls. Like, and I don't do that on purpose, but that's how my mind, cause everything just rushes together. But they weren't struggling with stress. This is an everyday conversation from how it sounded. They wanted to be very clear and distinct. They wanted to hurt who they were talking to. That level of clear intent shows intentionality, and it's a direct lineage into wanting to hurt who you're speaking to. Anytime I'm calm enough to cuss you out up and down and call you everything but a child of God, understand, I've processed those feelings long ago. That's not here. But what is here is me want to make sure that you feel every word I'm saying. It is important that we recognize that it is very unclear the source and the root. I mentioned neglect earlier, but he might have been loved over the moon by his father, right? He may not have been loved in the way that he wanted to receive it, but the truth is we will never know the true root of the problem. And in us not knowing the true root of the problem, it is an easy assessment to make that these men are sharing generational trauma with each other. Now, you know we talk about trauma, okay? This is what we do, unfortunately. I'm sorry to kick this up. I had someone reach out to me recently and say, I sent them the water video, and they reached out and was like, girl, I had to pause that. I was like, I'm so sorry, but that's my job. I want you to feel uncomfortable when you watch this. I want you to feel also enlightened when you finish it, because I wish he would have just sat through just a little bit longer, but hey, here we are. So, now that we know that they're sharing this trauma, right? We know that they're both sitting in the midst of this chaos. I, again, not a licensed health professional, just a critic, a talker, a me. I would like to recommend that they both seek joint counseling together so they can work cohesively on working towards a common goal, but also that they seek separate counseling for this specific issue. I don't want them to seek separate counseling and build on themselves and work on themselves. Granted, that's necessary, but I think it's very important that they're very intentional, just as they was cussing each other out, that they're very intentional about working on healing. Now, it is unfortunate that this is all taking place, that they're sharing this trauma, that there's neglect, that there's arrogance, that there's everything, ego, pride, all unfortunate. But we have to also recognize and say that both parties' feelings are valid. Kirk not wanting to be disrespected by his son, it's a valid experience. It's a valid emotion. The son not wanting to be disrespected by his father, it's a valid experience. It's a valid emotion. I think so often children, especially children raised in the South, especially children raised in the church, are constantly told that they're not supposed to be human until you've now had your own child and you can project your own issues onto said child. But I think we need to understand it coming to the light of children are whole beings, even before they're adults. Even as infants, as toddlers, as babies, they are whole beings. And they deserve respect just as much as the parents do. So, as always, we was dealing with the psycho and let's do with the science. Science always tells us that when you have a person who's been in a toxic cycle, especially an abusive cycle, they tend to lash out in defense of themselves, but they don't do it consistently depending on how deep they are in the abusive cycle. But if you have you ever seen a kid who just randomly, I mean out of nowhere, like say you at the cookout and the kid just, shut up mom, or like just lashes out towards the parent, and maybe you've done it. You know what, I ain't gonna lie, I have. Me and my mom were arguing over clothes for a dance. My mom, granted, now looking back, I shouldn't have told her the night before the dance. She might not have had the finances to do it, but I remember arguing with her like, yo, I really want to look nice for the dance. My mama was like, okay, just go in my closet. And I was like, no, I want to look. She was like, no, just go in the closet. And this is, as a parent was thinking, oh, this is how we typically solve issues. You know, if we have the means in the home, we just make a way. But for me, it was, I wanted to have a special isolated moment for me. And I was tired of not having those special isolated moments for myself, my brother, my sister. They were growing up, they were coming to their own. So, you know, money was getting divided more ways than one. And I wound up going off. I wound up being like, I want to look fly, mom. I want to look fly. And it's not to say that your clothes don't look fly. That's how she took it. But it's to say, like, I want to look that on my terms. I don't want to look that on your leftover terms out of your closet. And to this day, that gets brought up. Not so much in a passive-aggressive manner. Now it's a joke between us, where I'll see something in the store and my mom goes, is that fly? Is that fly enough for you? But that's me being in a cycle where I feel like I wasn't being prioritized. And then that was me also lashing out of that cycle, trying to find a way to speak up for myself in any means necessary type of manner. Now, the issue with the Kirk Franklin and his son Kerrian's case is we don't know who was lashing out at who. Like I said earlier, they were both cussing each other out pretty aggressively. So we don't know, has Kirk been in a cycle where he may have feel like he's exhausted all options? Maybe he feels like I'm at the end of my rope with patience, right? Is his son in the cycle where he feels like his father he's had an amazing career, he's had a healthy marriage, he's had other children not too long after me, so maybe I kind of just got pushed to the back burner from jump? Who's the source of the cycle, and more importantly, who's lashing out? We will never know. Again, not a licensed health physician. I like to think I am, but like at the school of Dominique, it's not a licensed or board certified place. I do, however, want to stir the pot just a little bit, and I want to stress how important it is to be an intentional parent. One of my friends, Hey Donald, he said something to me a few years ago that I will never forget. And it's like, when you're dealing with a certain type of household and you take a child and you say no, and the child says, well, why can't I touch this stove? And you say, because I said so, that you're not actually teaching the child or helping the child in any way whatsoever. Because you saying because you said so is not enough. It's not an actual reason. It's just you trying to be dismissive to a situation. So I don't ever learn why I can't touch this stove. I know some of my mama said I can't touch it, but I also know that when my mama not here, she can't say don't touch it. So I'm gonna touch it. Whereas what you should do is, because the stove is hot, it will burn you. Burns hurt. Burns are not good for you. Burns will leave you like this. Explain to them exactly what it is that will be the repercussions of said decision. You can't just rely on because I said so. But that goes into being an intentional parent. A lot of parents are dealing with their own trauma. Again, they're whole humans too. So a lot of parents don't know that I should stop and be intentional with this child. A lot of parents didn't know I should stop before I get pregnant to hell. So often, we continue those poor cycles of not being intentional with our children, and that's just a pot for trauma and a lot of other things that can happen and affect your body, mind, and soul. The issue with those things affecting your body, mind, and soul is that they can go untreated because a lot of people learn to thrive in chaos, unfortunately. Because you'll learn to thrive in chaos, and that is literally the worst place you can be. Okay, follow my brain. Just follow my brain for a minute. Just hop in, okay? I got a big head. We all have space in there. Just get in for a minute. So I have this theory, this working theory that I've been sitting with for a few months. And I have a theory that there's a direct link between the relationship that slave masters have with the enslaved people and Black families, Black American families, and their children. And you know, this theory kicks up for me all the time when I see people speak about their relationships with their parents and how, specifically with the Kirk Franklin and his son dynamic, how people were saying, you know, what did he say on Twitter? He was like, you know what's so effed up is when parents used to say, I will give you something to cry about. I was sitting there like, that's some slave master shit. Because to think that you have to inflict pain on somebody for just expressing emotions is some real sicko shit. Like, for real. Like, you really are not right in the head if you think that that's okay. The problem is, so many people think that that's okay. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen in the Latino community, the Indian or Native community, the Asian community, but I can't speak on that because I wasn't raised like that. But what I can say is, in the African American community, there's a lot of strong lines in how African American parents have been. There's a very direct association with the tools that African American parents have as far as raising their kids and where they got those tools from. And I think that they got a lot of those tools from slave masters from when they had us enslaved, unfortunately. And girl, let me tell you, this theory I had, we're gonna do a whole little doc on it. I reached out to you if you want to go before I apply for the grant about doing the doc. We're gonna do a little 30, 45 minute, little short thing, but I wanted to go to plantations, I wanted to go to HBCUs, I wanted to speak to African American historians, I wanted to do it all Black, I wanted to do it right, but finances is a beast, and the idea is beautiful. So if you want to sponsor that, let me holler at your girl, okay? Yeah, so we were going to speak to educators, cultural critics, people of the culture, just random Black people who grew up in Black-ass households. And like I said earlier, the finances got the best of us, but I was fully ready, and I still am fully ready to either find information, history, and knowledge to support my theory or to debunk it, because maybe I'm tripping. Maybe I'm just over-exaggerating. Maybe I'm just not thinking straight. I don't believe that, but I'm just being honest. Maybe I very well could be wrong, and that's okay. But I do think that's a conversation that African American children need to have with their African American ass parents about how they were raised unintentionally, how they kind of was just brought up, not really watered, not really nurtured, but kind of just set out in the sun. And I think it's unfortunate because when I see things like people being kicked out at 18, struggling, like, you got your own crib, yeah, but you ain't got no furniture, baby. but it was the mind frame of, I have to get out of that home by any means necessary. And they don't even know that they're doing that out of survival mode, right? And it's like, why are you thinking like this? Like, why are you putting yourself through this? You can't even go to school now because you gotta work. You can't even advance your lifestyle because you were so busy trying to run out of that hellhole, and you can't even tell me what was really going on with you because you got so much trauma on your shoulders. And it's like, what is going on? Because then you meet their parents, and their parents are like, well, he's 18. And it's like, did you want to do this? Did you want to have this kid? Because it's not looking like it. Before you go on another tangent, before we even go down another road, I definitely want to speak to African American parents when I say, please be intentional when you are raising a Black child, especially an African American, especially in America, especially with the way the country is. Please be intentional with them. Be intentional with them before you have the racial talk. As always, okay? Every time we talk, I have to ask you a question. I want to know what you know, and I want to know how you feel, okay? The question for this episode is, what did the video between Kirk Franklin and Kirk Franklin's son Kieran kick up for you? See you next Monday. Hopefully in a better place mentally. Bye.